There are hundreds of choices you can make before the round, during the round and after the round, which results in you winning or losing. Some of these choices are like whether you should rotate or stay on site, when you should play retake, and whether you should hold a certain angle or not. So how do you know what's the right choice to make? Well, in this video I'll be showing you the ins and outs of defending, which includes what you can do before the round starts, what you can do during the round, and what you can do after the round to win the next one. So let's get started. First of all, we're going to talk about what you should do before the round starts. Personally, what I would be doing is checking the economy and ult status of the enemy team. You can use this information to decide what playstyle would be best for that round. For example, if the enemies are on an eco round, then I would recommend to play more long distant, as you will have the advantage. I would also not peek at the start of the round, as they will most likely be all grouped up and attacking that one site. Even if you get a kill and die, I would not be giving the enemy team a vandal, which would massively increase their chances of winning that round. If you have a cypher or killjoy on your team, then I would see what site they set up on, as the enemies are most likely going to try and gather as much information on that sentinel and try and avoid them as much as possible. I would also be thinking about where the enemies usually play and what I could do to counter that. Let's say the enemies like having control mid, then I would push through A main to claim more space. And if they try and push through trees to A site, then it's easy for me and my teammates to sandwich the enemies who are on site. Okay, so now the round has started and I'll be mostly jump peeking common angles to try and get information on where the enemies are. I would also be checking my map to see if my teammates are getting pushed and also listening for any sounds so that the enemies don't sneak up onto site. This is what I'd be doing as soon as the round starts to gather as much information as possible. I do want to note that it can be good to peek a common angle right when the barriers drop, but it can only be good in certain situations. For example, if you're on an eco round, then maybe if you have a marshal, then holding a long range angle and getting an early kill could be huge for your team. Situations like these you have to assess before you peek. Another thing to note is to communicate with your team if you're going to peek. I might go for a peek. And you could get someone to flash out or create noise elsewhere as soon as the round starts to lower the chances of you dying as soon as you peek. I would also only be peeking like this with either Jett, Reyna or Chamber, as they can easily get away from a disadvantaged situation and stop themselves from being traded. Some more things I would think about are what angles I should be holding. If I get pressured on site, then how am I going to get off site safely and play for the retake? And if I get a pick, then where and what am I going to do next? If you're higher than plat, then you may have noticed that every time you kill someone, it's very rare that an enemy will not try and trade their teammate. Therefore, higher level players have to be ready to face another enemy as soon as they kill someone. Rotating is usually a big talk when defending, but simply I just rotate when one of your teammates die on site and you don't see any enemies on your side or at mid. When this happens, I would always check mid for any lurkers, as these can usually be the deciding factor for whether you win a retake or not. If the enemies don't get past the main choke point, then I wouldn't rotate. If your teammates are getting traded and some die but it's not a full push, then you can stay at your site and probably get some easy kills, as you can position yourself in a very unpredictable place, as the enemies have no map control on that side of the map. A common scenario is for the attackers to try and hit B main on ascent and it fails, then they're most likely to quick rotate through mid to A site, where you can position yourself deep into A main for you and your teammates to easily sandwich your enemies for an easy round win. Precise comms when defending is a must if you're wanting any sort of success on your defender rounds. One mistake which I see people make is saying very vague things that often confuse your teammates. Instead of saying something like footsteps A, you want to be trying to listen out for how many footsteps there are. For example, if you hear just one set of footsteps, then you can say something like one footstep noise A, or if you hear more than one footsteps, then you can say something like multiple steps A. And this will just give your team a better idea for what the enemies are doing and how fast they should rotate. This is a mistake I see happening a lot in the platinum range, as a teammate will just say footsteps A and the whole team will rotate, even though there might only be one or two enemies trying to push the A site. And this is where the term over-rotating gets used a lot, but the thing is, having more precise comms will allow your teammates to decide whether they need to rotate or not. Finally, for retake, you want to be using any util that you have left to gather as much information on their location. The best case scenario is that the attackers are still playing on site, and therefore you can work as a team to trade each other and win the round. However, most attackers will play off site. If they have revealed that they have lineups, then you want to have someone always trying to flank the enemies to disrupt the lineups. Or if they're just trying to play post plant, then you want to be using any available smokes to smoke off their position to where they can't see the spike. Easily you can just hold the smoke while your teammate defuses the spike. If you don't have any smokes however, you'll need to push them while a teammate defuses to try and hope that you win the gunfight. If you're in a 1v1 or similar, then to give yourself as much time as possible on the retake, you can use any information like how much health the enemy may have to decide whether they will play post plant or not. For example, if your teammate says that they've hit the enemy for 120, then they'll most likely be playing off site as they don't want to take a 50-50 gunfight. Therefore, you can quickly check site and tap the spike to locate the last enemy. Okay, so maybe you've won a couple rounds but died in the process. So while spectating, you should be thinking about where the enemies were playing, how have you just died, and what you could have done to stop your death from happening. If you can do this and adjust your positioning accordingly, then you're going to see a huge improvement on defense. If you struggle to see your mistakes, then I would recommend recording your games and watching them back. But just to add, sometimes in Valorant you can play a situation perfectly but don't win the round. However, most of the time, a choice that you made earlier in the round has resulted in your death, and therefore you will need to realise that mistake and improve on it for the next round. So now you should know how to think more like a Radiant when it comes to defending in Valorant. If you enjoyed this video and it helped you out, then please drop a like and subscribe as these videos take long to make. As always, it's been your boy Critical, peace out.